Without a doubt, two of the best TVs you're going to be able to buy in 2025, the Panasonic Z95B and the Sony Bravia 8 Mark II. One is a primary RGB tandem OLED and the other one is a QD-OLED panel. These are amazing TVs, and really, can you go wrong with either of them? No. But we're going to pick apart both of them and try to find out which one you should buy at the end of the day. Let's get this straight. When we're looking at the sizes, the Panasonic Z95B has a size that the Sony doesn't have, the 77-inch size. And if you're going to make the sacrifice of not getting a 77-inch Z95B because you like the Bravia 8 Mark II better, I don't say this that often, but I think that would be a mistake. It really would. When picture quality is very similar, I don't think you make a sacrifice of size, not one bit. So that's our first knock against Sony. And there's going to be more knocks, no doubt about it, but there's also going to be knocks on the Z95B as well. And by the way, for full transparency, the Sony Bravia 8 Mark II was sent to me by Sony, and the Panasonic Z95B I ended up buying from Amazon. If you're interested in buying either of these TVs yourself and you want to help out this channel, please do consider using the affiliate links in the description below. Thank you guys so much for your support. Now let's get on to the comparison. These are really great TVs. I'm splitting hairs when I'm talking about the differences of them. And when it comes down to compromises that you'll have to make, one of the compromises and one of the decision points you'll have to make is within dark scenes, low luminance scenes, if you will. You know, looking at some of the 4K Blu-rays that I had, one thing that stuck out to me was the difference of those low luminance scenes. There's definitely a lot of different things where you could see a characteristic is different with these two TVs in mind, and really not just these two TVs, but primary RGB tandem OLED and the QD-OLED panels. I saw a lot of different characteristics with that in mind, and this is one thing that I pointed out in my four-way comparison and on the live stream that I did after that. I think that there's definitely a distinct difference between the panels, at least out of the box. Now, when they're calibrated, will they look the same? It's possible. Definitely, that's what calibration sort of aims for. They try to get the TVs in line with reference, and they end up looking very similar across the board. But out of the box, there's definitely a different look to the panels in terms of the primary RGB and the QD-OLED. When I'm looking at the Sony, I definitely see that there's more shadow detail, as you can see in some of these scenes here. And with the shadow detail in mind, it's not just going to be how much can you see in the shadows, it's also going to be how does the skin tones look within low luminance as well. And there was often scenes where if it was really dark, I could get the sense that there was some discoloration or something going on with the primary RGB OLED panels, where I see that on the Z95B, but it's definitely worse on the G5. So the Z95B does a better job, but I definitely do see some things that just look a little bit odd on the Panasonic, where on the Sony it looks fine. And same thing with the S95F, right? And then the G5 had the same look as the Z95B. So they have these characteristics to them that are going to be different depending on the panel that they have. This is where I think there's going to be a split among the viewers on what they prefer. Which image do you prefer? What I'm showing you these examples of the movies, do you like what you're seeing on the Z95B better, or do you like what you're seeing on the Bravia 8 Mark II better? Definitely let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear your opinion on this, because I was kind of split myself with the Z95B and the Bravia 8 Mark II for stuff like this, because I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, the Z95B definitely has a character to it that I really like, and I like the definition that I'm getting out of these primary RGB panels. But it was the same low luminance scenes where you could see a lot of crushing, and you could see just some more picture anomalies than you would see on the Sony for this in mind. So yeah, there's some sacrifices to be made here to get this look apparently. And I do want to be clear that the Sony had its own issues as well in some low luminance scenes. There is definitely going to be some instances where you would catch some things, maybe oversaturating a little bit here and there. It was one of those things where you could notice it sticks out when you're looking at 4 TVs, but if you're looking at it on its own, you probably wouldn't notice a problem. Now, the Bravia 8 Mark II certainly had its fair share of edge enhancement from time to time, as I do have reality creation on by default. This is on the default professional mode out of the box, so I didn't touch much any settings, and reality creation is on by default. But if you wanted a cleaner look, you could turn off reality creation and you can get a really soft presentation out of this TV. If you're somebody that doesn't really like edge enhancement, then Sony does a really good job of having a clean presentation. And when I say soft, I don't mean it in a negative way. I'm actually giving compliments to the Sony Bravia 8 because it does have that more filmic look to it at times, where you can definitely feel like it does not really compromise the picture quality from where it was. And this actually kind of differs from how Sony TVs were in the past. The Panasonic, on the other hand, prior to release, we heard about this TV was going to be one of the more pure TVs and not having a lot of edge enhancement. There's definitely the case that there is edge enhancement on this TV. You could even see it when you pull up some of the Spears and Munsell patterns. And yeah, it's definitely something going on there, where the S95F was one of the cleaner ones that I seen, and the Bravia 8 Mark II was certainly clean when you have reality creation off. And if you have reality creation on, it's just a little bit of an edge enhancement here and there when it feels like it needs it. And it's not going to be something that's like in your face like the G5 is with their edge enhancement, and kind of feels like an over sharpened look that you're getting with the G5. You don't get that sense with either of these two TVs. Now let's talk about the color differences. I think that when you're looking at color on these TVs, one thing that stuck out to me was just how colorful both TVs are in terms of delivering really good color to you. They both had that element to it. It was clear to me that the king of HDR color was going to be the Samsung S95F. Even with the color bug, surprisingly, it was still the most colorful TV, and it had the best color brightness among all four TVs that I looked at. One of the examples I showed in my comparison of the 4-way was Mad Max, and that's definitely where QD-OLED came ahead of most of the TVs, especially in those high color brightness scenes. And you could see that that is definitely the case, but the Z95B wasn't too far behind, and I'm just overall impressed with the color from the Z95B. Despite it not being a QD-OLED, it did appear to really just impress me a lot of times. Now, looking at some aspects like upscaling and low bitrate content, there's no doubt about it that the Sony Bravia 8 Mark II is the winner there, and winner by a good margin. I think in a few scenes that I've seen, it was just definitely the cleaner one across the board. I think streaming movies was a treat on the Bravia 8 Mark II, and everybody asked me, why do I pick it for movies? Well, I stream a lot of movies. I'm not just fortunate to have everything on 4K Blu-ray, so I do stream a lot of movies, and if I'm taking that into consideration with bitrate coming in, and sometimes you're not getting the best internet connection depending on where you're living and how much they want to throttle you that night, I definitely think the Sony is going to do a better job of cleaning that signal up, even when you're not getting the most pristine signal. So I like the Sony for movies for that reason alone. And it just does seem like it is giving me the best tone mapping in terms of what I'm getting from the TV. And tone mapping is just, there's really not a wrong way to do it, guys. It's just going to be, which one do you like better? And I think for me, I liked the Sony better for the tone mapping. At times, if there was content that really pushed it, then sometimes you lost some information on the Z95B, where you would get that information on the Sony. And that's just going to be the dynamic tone mapping algorithm. They're both doing dynamic tone mapping in their own way, and they're both doing a really good job at keeping the content looking great doing it. Speaking of picture options, there's a lot for the Panasonic, and you can have a lot of flexibility with the image, just like you can with the Sony. Sony has reality creation, which you can really push the boundaries on if you want to crank it up even further than what it is at default. It's going to give you a different type of presentation, and Resolution Master is going to do a similar thing for Panasonic, but it does seem to be a little bit more noticeable and more exaggerated. SDR is definitely one of the harder things to showcase for you guys, so I'm just going to talk about it here and tell you that they both do SDR fairly well. I would say I didn't really have a problem with either in SDR, whether you're going to watch it in a dark room and you keep the brightness low to kind of make sure that your viewing is comfortable, then I think it's going to be a good experience on both TVs. Now, if you're trying to push the brightness because you're in a bright room, the SDR brightness from the Z95B is definitely more significant. But if you want to get there with the Sony, it's definitely possible if you use the vivid mode, but the vivid mode is going to have a lot of changes made to it. Just keep that in mind. And this is going to be something where if you're really after SDR brightness, and I mean this even in game mode, which I'm going to get to here, but the brightness in game mode for the Z95B and SDR is definitely better than the Sony. Before we get into gaming, I want to talk about the design of the TVs and the sound quality of the TVs real quick. It's not going to take that long. But the design of the stand on the Sony, I'm not a big fan of that. It's too wide and I wish there was multiple positions. So I really want to put that out there that if you're going to buy this TV, please measure and make sure that the measurements are correct or you may run into problems. With the Panasonic, you have to like the design. I like the design, but not everybody's going to like this design. It does have a chin on the bottom with the sound bar sort of situation where you're getting a built-in sound quality that does sort of match that of a sound bar, and it really does sound amazing. The sound on the Panasonic is incredible, and you can actually add a subwoofer if you want to use an active subwoofer. But let's say you go with the Sony instead, you're not getting a slouch for sound. There's definitely really good sound quality coming out of the Sony. The sound is definitely going to be better than most TVs out there, and I do think that the Sony has pretty good sound quality overall. It's just that the Z95B is on a different level of sound that we have to talk about. All right, let's get into gaming now. I will have a separate gaming comparison video for you guys where I really dig into gaming, but let's just talk like basics for game mode. They're both going to have a really presentable game mode, awesome game mode, probably the best looking game modes of the TVs right now, because out of the box, man, they just look great. Honestly, the true game mode, amazing looking out of the box, no sacrifices, no compromises you have to make, you don't have to change anything, it just looks good out of the box. Same thing with the Sony in standard game mode, wow, looks amazing out of the box, you don't have to even change anything. That's what I'm looking for out of my TVs, man. Give me game modes like that. You hear me, manufacturers? Give me game modes like that. Now, rant over. I love the picture quality of both of these TVs in game mode. If you like more exaggerated game modes, don't worry. You can do that on the Sony and you can do that on the Panasonic. So there is different types of ways to set your game mode up if you like that different presentation. As far as the HDR goes for the game mode, I think that the Panasonic is going to have one of the easier ones to set up because it is going to be by default in the clipping mode, which is going to abide by the HGiG guidelines. So this is going to be really easy to follow patterns. You're not going to have an issue setting up your HDR. With the Sony, it's a little bit tougher. There is going to be dynamic tone mapping on in every mode, so it doesn't matter what kind of pattern you set. There's a chance that it could get dynamically tone mapped and it's hard to set that pattern. I'll go more into detail when we get to that video, but man, I just want to say that it's definitely easier on the Panasonic for gaming in terms of setting it up. But in terms of the overall feature set that you're getting with the TV, the Panasonic is going to be capable of 144 Hz of VRR. So if you got PC gaming and you want to do 144, you can do that. If you're a console gamer, you got the maximum ability with the Sony where that only goes up to 120 Hz. But like I said, both are going to be great for consoles, and I have to say that it's going to be almost the same in terms of the functionality from the TV as well. You got two HDMI 2.1 ports, and both are going to be on the ERC port, which is going to be good if you want to do pass-through with your TV. You don't want this port on a different port. But ideally, in 2025, you would like to see TVs that have 4 HDMI 2.1 ports. I bet you Sony's glad that Panasonic's selling TVs in the US now. They're not the only one I could talk about only having 2 HDMI 2.1 ports anymore. All right, let me know what you guys are going to buy in the comment section below between these two TVs. And if you want to keep watching comparison videos just like this, check out these comparisons right here. I think you're going to like them. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next one.